All right. I can get lots of feedback if I would do both of them. Testing, 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 testing.
Hold it right up to your mouth there.
The old musician's joke, testes, 1, 2. Okay. My job is to introduce the open government data movement to mainly the Python people. I assume the open government Chicago people. The original purpose of this was kind of to try to get you guys involved and aware of what's been going on with open government stuff in Chicago and nationally. And want to thank Mike Hall for connecting us. I don't know if Mike is here. He had some accident. Mike, you here? I don't think he is. Connecting with Brian and getting this presentation together. So there's two types of kind of open data. There's data for transparency, and we can go all the way back to 1919 in Montana. A copper miner basically bought the entire Montana Senate and for $10,000 a piece, and he ran the state of Montana government. Didn't require a lot of money. And voters basically rebelled, and they passed a Public Corruption Act, and they eliminated corporate contributions, and they limited the amount that an individual citizen can give, and they required that people make that public. So that's going all the way back to 1919. Now, interestingly enough, the Citizens United decision, which I think should be called Billionaires United, is going to reverse this decision probably in the next couple of weeks. The next big milestone was 1972, the Watergate Break-In. Some of you are too young to remember the Watergate Break-In, but basically Nixon had a crew of guys who broke into the Watergate Hotel, and they treated that as a little minor kind of offset thing, but during the investigation they discovered that the guys who had broken in were financed by guys like Howard Hughes, and people got very upset. In 1974, Common Cause led a national campaign. They got federal election law finance passed. They got state finance laws in 13, 14 states, most of the major states. And they were bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats. It was impossible for the Senate and the House to not vote for. So that's kind of the government transparency part of this thing. There's also this idea of government or Gov 2.0, or data as a platform. And basically, instead of citizens treating government like a vending machine, this is O'Reilly's words, the government should get into the platform business so government can better serve citizens, and civic-minded developers can serve themselves and serve others by extending the platform. There's lots of examples of that, not just in the data world. You've got lots of people making lots of money by doing weather reporting services. You've got the National Highway System, which has spawned all kinds of businesses and related businesses. And when you think about it, the internet, which goes back to the original military network, is a public project that the HTML that the web is built on, and goes back into the 50s, the early days, but it really started, the HTML aspect of it started in the early 90s. Open 311, Baltimore is using Open 311. Open 311 is basically, 311 is when you have a pothole or you have a water leak, and you call and say, well, there's a water leak on our block, and it goes into a system, and then crews are scheduled. Typically, at least in our neighborhood, someone comes out and assesses how serious it is and when they need to fix the water leak, and then if they decide it needs to be fixed within a week, a crew comes out within a week and fixes it. Open 311 allows people to programmatically file 311 requests, but also retrieve 311 requests in real time. And when you think about it, there's lots of interesting applications. For quite a while in Chicago here, abandoned buildings are a big problem. They're costing the city and the county a tremendous amount of money, tens of millions of dollars a year, and the banks had refused to kind of take care of the abandoned buildings. They passed an abandoned building ordinance. For a long time, the only reporting we had of which buildings were abandoned is buildings that people had called 311 and said, we think this building's abandoned. The city sends out someone within 10 days, confirms whether it's abandoned or not. Now, there's an ordinance that requires a lot better data from the servicers, which means the banks, the people who own the properties. Once you go into foreclosure, the banks get some responsibility for maintaining that property. City of Chicago has released a data portal. It really started during the Daley administration. The first two things they released were most popular books in the library and FOIA requests. They did this to penalize reporters who were clamoring for open data. They wanted the Sun-Times reporter to see what the Tribune reporter was looking for to try to make it hard for people to have exclusive stories. Things have improved considerably during the Emanuel administration. This is I'm at WebEtex, but I'm also one of the founders of Open City, which Forrest and Derek's one of the founders, Forrest, Juan, Chad Pryatt, Groupon, I don't think he's here, and a bunch of other people we've been volunteering to do a bunch of projects. If you want to look at what we've been working on, opencityapps.org will take you to. But anyway, about May or June of last year, the city released a whole bunch of lobbying data, and I happened to notice it, and I looked at all it is, like 16 different databases, and I tried to figure out how we could relate data in all the 16 databases. Then I called a couple guys at Groupon. I talked to Derek, who we worked together, and we said, what can we do with this data? We had a couple of meetings, and about a week or so, we figured we could actually tell a story with this data. Then Google and the city of Chicago sponsored a hackathon. We went to that. We recruited about 5 more volunteers, and we created Chicago Lobbyists in basically about a 10-hour day. And then we realized there were lots of problems with the data we were getting. We posted those problems on the website. The city responded. Within 3 or 4 weeks, they had improved the data. They'd given us data we needed. They'd normalized the data. We spent, before the hackathon, we spent two days normalizing the data. So anyway, it's a example of the city actually responding to independent designers and developers who want to do something. Pretty good example. I include this because it's historic and also it involves Dan O'Neill, who worked with Adrian Holovati, and Harper Reid, who's now CTO of the Obama campaign. They basically intercepted the data that CTA was supplying for a proprietary application. They'd actually gone to a private vendor. The way they wrote it, I think it probably had a JSON feed or something like that. Do you know, did it have JSON? Is it XML? Okay. I think they say it was an XML feed. They intercepted it. They basically did their own application, and then they approached the CTA, the leadership and the developers and designers, and they said, oh, we've already kind of liberated this data. Why don't you make it public for everyone? And they did. And the interesting thing is that the developers there were really excited that now they could use their own data to produce. It changed the whole attitude, and it was another kind of cooperative thing. And you guys know there's like 10 million CTA applications now. The last thing in the world we need is another CTA bus tracker or train tracker. This is a project of Forrest and Derek. They did overnight before a snowstorm. The city, about a day, 2 days before the snowstorm, they released their night before, they released their plow tracker application. And that had the really useful information. If you wanted to know where a plow was, you could find that out. Well, how many of us want to know where a plow is? We want to know what has the plow plowed. So Forrest basically got the data. That was a JSON feed, right? They got the data. They extrapolated probable paths based on how often did you get the data? Every 20 seconds. So then they used an algorithm to extrapolate what the path is. And then they used OpenStreetMaps, which has some problems in terms of inaccuracy in the streets and that kind of thing. But anyway, they can actually tell you, you can put in your address, you can find out what streets around where you are have been plowed with a reasonable 80% accuracy, 85% accuracy, something like that. So if you need to get somewhere, this is pretty useful when you think about it. Now, they got in a little hassle with the city people for kind of criticizing the fact that it didn't occur to them that people didn't need to know where their plows were, but that's another. Okay. Now, this is from the bottom of the Open City Apps homepage. We've only been doing this stuff. We've really only been official since August or so. And in the few months we've been around, we've been on TV. These guys have been on TV how many times now? 3 times? Two, once each. We've done radio interviews. We've had national stories. We've had New York Times used our Chicago lobbyists to research an article. I mean, this is showing you how easy it is to get attention and press in an environment where really none of this was being done on this scale. And Juan gets a little credit. He's our press guy, PR guy. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. The first really well done open data project was in Washington, D.C. It was run by a guy named Dan Thomas, who's really a seminal figure in open data. He was in charge of the project. Obama's open data guy was kind of working for him, the previous open data guy. And the big challenge was not really writing the code or supplying APIs and bulk downloads. It was how do you convince all of the heads of each department that they should make their data public. So Dan was a really good organizer, and he had the support of the mayor. And so he went around and he interviewed all 34 department heads, and he identified the one guy who would agree immediately to release his data. And so they got together with him, they released the data, and then the mayor had a little internal ceremony where he put his arm around the first guy and, and said, "This is just fantastic." And immediately, guys who were down here, all of a sudden they wanted to start getting in line. So by that simple tactic of just, the way you kind of get new technology into a big organization by just taking a little teeny bit at a time, he got all the way through all these 34 guys. The 34th guy refused. It turns out he was the only guy who was actually corrupt and he was hiding data for a real good reason, because he was taking money to screw things up. But anyway, this site is very important. I think it's data.dc.gov. It's very important in the history. One interesting thing is that, can anyone guess who the primary users of this website are? The city of D.C. Give you an example. The city of Chicago has a full-time lawyer who does nothing but file FOIA requests with the police department. So just making government more efficient, like the city of Chicago has 7 different departments that deal with housing, often with the same things, same data. So it's really, really difficult, and they don't talk to each other. This is pretty typical in some large governments. So having this, people thought it was a transparency issue, that kind of thing. It actually was a government efficiency issue. Now you probably know, Holovati created Chicago Crime in 2005, which was a big splash. It was one of the first Google map mashups. And he basically scraped data off of the city's crime site, ClearMap, and plotted it on a Google map. There's about a 2-week delay initially, I think, and created a lot of controversy, and he got an award. And so the Knight Foundation heard about him and decided to give him a grant in 2007 to create EveryBlock. Now, strictly speaking, EveryBlock's not an open data application because they collected a lot of data, but they never released any data. They have no APIs or anything like that. But they were very important in kind of setting the stage in Chicago and then nationally for collecting data in whatever form it was, whether it was PDF or pieces of paper or whatever, and figure out, they wrote software to scrape PDFs and extract the data in some form that they could use reasonably efficiently, that type of thing. So they made a big impact on people like us who are interested in open data, and Dan O'Neill was responsible for approaching city officials and eventually traveling all over the country and getting data from lots of, so governments become aware that there was a market, there was a reason to provide data partly through EveryBlock. In December 2007, a bunch of open government advocates got together and put together these basic principles of open data, which are still worth reviewing. I'm not going to read them to you, but we usually say machine readable, machine processable. You're thinking you should be able to add data and you should be able to take data out, non-proprietary. What they don't say here, which is a big problem, as part of the machine processable, it needs to be normalized. And a lot of government data, public data is not normalized. It's a big, big problem, especially if you're dealing with millions of record sets. So that's something that is still a huge problem. In January 2009, the first city camp was held in Chicago, and hundreds of designers and developers came from all over the country. Tim O'Reilly was there. He announced Code for America, was a real energized. A lot of people whose names you would know now from Chicago were there. A really interesting, we were sponsors of the event. It was about 3.5 years ago. And it really kind of spawned the Chicago open data movement in a fairly big way. Of course, it took a long time before we'd actually get any data, but the city of Chicago internally was collecting data, they just weren't releasing it. And the Department of the Department of Innovation and IT had people collecting data and putting it in formats that could be released, and they worked with some external agencies but Daily Press Office never allowed it to be released until just the last couple of months of his administration, and then they released the FOIA and the library book data. Actually, Derek worked on a project with the Columbia Journalism School to collect FOIA data, and then they actually had students call every FOIA, TIFF, every TIFF location and try to learn something about it. They put it all together in one database. They plotted on a map. They wrote stories about it. New York Times cited it. So that was, once the FOIA data was kind of out there, it kind of might as well release it if you're the city. Then Obama was elected. He started data.gov. It was released in 2009. It started with 47 data sets, and it was 450,000 data sets. What they don't tell you is a lot of the data is very generalized, so it's not granular enough. If you get 5 levels, they go down 3 levels, or they go down 4 levels, but it's not granular enough to do anything useful. They had this big contest to use Medicare data, but they don't give it to you down to the anonymized individual patient level. If we could get that, so all you could do with the data is, yeah, go ahead.
If you give, the more fine-grained you give the data, the easier it is to de-anonymize, even anonymized data.
I agree with you. I know there are big issues. It's been proven over and over again that if you correlate enough data sets, but if you had the anonymized individual patient records, you could do cancer studies. You could take all the women who have been treated for breast cancer using this therapy and this therapy and this therapy and this therapy. You wouldn't have to do a lot of these studies. You would it would increase the progress of medicine tremendously. There is actually a project now in Evanston to take all the Evanston Hospital data, keep it internal, but start doing this sort of analysis, which should be, there's also a cancer center in Texas which is trying to use Texas data to do the same sort of thing. There's tremendous potential here if we can get anonymized, granular data to help medical research. And then finally in 2011, the data portal in Chicago starts to open up. Again, we get 20 most popular fiction books, but partly influenced by Derek's work and Columbia's work, they release all the TIFF stuff. And then John Tolva makes a urinary reference here. We're only dribbling now, expect a steady stream. If you haven't met him, he's quite a character. Oh, the first Wednesday of every month, there's Urban Geek Drinks at a place on South Clark. Villains on South Clark. It's about 600 South Clark. Tolva usually goes there and he DJs. He plays the music way too loud so you can't talk to each other. But it's become the place to go for people in the know. It's where the elite meet to greet and eat, you know. So if you're interested, it's worth going. And it used to be kind of a little private invitation only thing, but now Justin Massa, Yeah, it's largely data people or people who are interested in urban sustainability, that kind of thing.
It's like cities and technology.
It's cities and technology, yeah.
What's the date on that again?
It's the first Wednesday of every month at Villains, yeah.
There's no irony.
And they have really good beer on tap. They have a whole bunch of different types of beer on tap. 200 kinds of beer in bottles. I mean, really high, and free food.
Come for the people, stay for the beer.
Yeah, come for the. It really. I've been gone since I think the first one. I think there were like just 10 of us the first one. It's definitely worth going to. So what's next? Well, we're going to get more data, obviously, which is part of what these guys are going to talk about tonight. Better data tools, which is part of what these guys are going to talk about. Better apps, more data workers. There's tremendous demand. In Silicon Valley, if you went to the Strata conference or data-related conferences, you know that VCs are pouring money into big data-related projects. Mostly private. There's no money for civic projects, but using Twitter data screens. And there's a project we may be working on, which basically it's not proprietary, takes Twitter mentions. Like, let's say Samsung releases a new tablet. Well, within 2 or 3 hours, you can mine the Twitter fire hose. You can find out what people are thinking about the tablet, the first one, the early adopters, and then you can make a stock recommendation to people who subscribe to the service based on the initial social media reaction to the release of the product. A lot of that kind of stuff going on.
I have a research paper that studied that also. They tried to predict the stock market really quickly.
That's more difficult, obviously. There's a whole bunch of this type of stuff going on, which we don't have time to talk about now. Now, when I say more sustainability, there's lots of reasons to think that data can be used to reduce people's energy consumption. Like when you think about it, in states that have public power, where you can get the data is public about how much energy an apartment uses. There are some states require that when you post a classified ad about an apartment, you not only put the rent, but you put the monthly utility cost. Because if a student's going to rent an apartment, you want to know the total cost. So if you show the total cost, the landlords have an incentive to improve the energy efficiency because you're comparing the real costs. Now, where you have private utilities, it's very difficult to liberate that data. So Illinois has a law that kind of requires ComEd to release their data, but you have to make a phone call. It's not machine, you don't have to post it in your classified ads, that kind of thing. So there's lots of potential for improving energy efficiency and sustainability, which unfortunately is dependent on a lot of that data being in private hands. Political transparency, as you guys know, Citizens United, what I call Billionaires United, is major blow to political transparency. I don't know how many of you follow this, but they can not only form these super PACs, but they can form 501c4s, which are nonprofits. They don't have to list the donors. They don't have to actually report until next year. And it looks like, we may very well have a Republican presidency, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House of Representatives, and there's no going back after that. There's a joke in the open data movement that you have to have an ID to vote, but you don't have to have an ID to buy an election. And a lot of the money coming in is foreign money, that type of thing. Next step, which we're going to have a presentation with Tolva and an architect, Doug Farr, a real forward-looking architect. Hopefully next month or the month after, we're looking for a venue about kind of integrating the digital and built environments. So when you think about it, there's lots of things that are wired already, like big belly garbage collectors, parking meters, people are carrying around smartphones, all this kind of stuff. There's a project in Scotland, I think, isn't it? There was just a story in BBC, Scotland, where they're wiring the public way, installing cameras, all this kind of stuff, and then they're going to do analysis. It's kind of a big brother, a little bit wary of it, but there is a lot of potential for integrating basically making things more efficient, making life more pleasant, more efficient, all this kind of stuff, thinking about the built environment and the data components. The example Tolva gives that you probably haven't noticed, but if you go to a bus stop, there's a number you can text to, which will tell you back when the next bus is coming. So people who just have feature phones can only text, they can get the same information as smartphone people. So a lot of approaches like that are being worked on, primarily in Europe right now, but they want to do that in Chicago too, so it's a real interesting area. And I think that's it. Yep. One thing before, my girlfriend has had Iceman Cometh tickets for 3 months now, and I'm missing the first act, so I have to leave immediately. She's going to be really pissed off.
Paul, you want to take some questions real quick?
I can take some. I want to tell you, we are going to be working on a project with the Sunlight Foundation. The FCC requires that television stations list every commercial they run, who pays for every political commercial. Well, they've stopped it in court. It was supposed to be released in digital form. They're going to stop it probably. The courts won't rule on it until after the election. But Sunlight is organizing thousands of people to visit their TV station every week, collect the data. They're putting it in a database, and then they're talking to us about then visualizing it, trying to correlate it with some of the Google election data, polling data, stories about. So we're going to be looking for volunteers to work on that. If send me an email or
Paul
tweet me.
WebEd,
Yeah, if you're interested in working on that.
Well, first thing, good job. Thanks, Paul. If you got a question for Paul, raise your hand. I'll give you the microphone so everyone can hear you. Raise your hand if you got a question for Paul.
Do you have any of the land plat and street easement type of information online anywhere?
The county assessor's office has that data, and I think they just announced that they're going to release it. Have you been following that for us? Yeah, I think just a few days ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Looks skeptical. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I mean, I would be surprised if that ever happens before we get into
No, I think that there was just a press release like 3 days ago saying they're going to release the parcel data and all that kind of stuff. It is going to be available through CMAP. CMAP gets that data from the assessors. It's a long story, but the county bought a system that requires them to pay 12 cents or something like that every time someone accesses parcel data, and they somehow figured out a way to get around that. It would cost them tens of millions of dollars a day. But what I heard is it is going to be released.
Anyone else a question? Raise your hand.
I didn't need a mic. For the recording.
Yeah, so I was kind of curious how WebEtext goes about making its data visualizations as accessible as possible in as many ways as possible. So it seems like at times the government app community can be kind of insular. It makes apps for itself. I'm wondering just how WebEtext kind of thinks about that and what you do to combat that.
Well, we need to distinguish between OpenCity and WebEtext. OpenCity is three of us at WebEtext were founders of OpenCity, but there's other people involved. So OpenCity is different. WebEtext does work on open data projects, and we do consulting also. But OpenCity is a bunch of guys here plus a bunch of other guys. And it's kind of a hard question in terms of the user interface you're talking about, or you're talking. Well, we have really good designers who are really experienced in making things clear and easy to understand, and we use the D3 library, a pretty sophisticated library, and other libraries, HighChart. Basically, you just need to become aware of the different, and you need to have quite a bit of experience in making stuff clear and accessible. I don't know what more I can say. It's learn by doing, basically. Sure. Sure.
Last question. Anybody?
Is there anything else you talk about at the Sunlight Foundation? Sorry.
So I've been following the Sunlight Foundation's attempts to try and get this
data liberated about campaign spending on. Can you talk about that at all a little bit more, just for a second?
A little bit. We talked, and we were at a conference last week, and we talked to a couple of the main people involved in it, including the woman in charge. The first hurdle is getting enough volunteers to actually go collect the data.
How many volunteers do you need?
They're not absolutely sure they're going to be able to get as many volunteers as they need. They tried it out in Wisconsin during the Walker recall, and they really weren't able to get enough volunteers despite having some union help and some activist help and student help.
Is there like a metric? Like, so Chicago, what's the population of Chicago?
Chicago doesn't matter. They're really only going to do it in, they're only like going to look at the Walsh race. They're going to look where the Billionaires United money is going, which looks like it's only going to be Walsh in Illinois. We're kind of deprived because we're in a progressive city. We never get any of these ads. We don't know what's going on in the rest of the country.
No, but Ohio is going to get hit really hard.
Yeah, they're going to concentrate on the swing states and in the House of Representatives races and the Senate races in non-swing states where there's a tremendous amount of money going in. In Wisconsin, for instance, the pro-Walker recall people spent $5 million, and the anti-Walker recall people spent $45 million. I mean, this, my opinion, this to pretend that it doesn't make any difference is just ridiculous. Well, the ones who are in favor of the recall spent $5 million, and the ones who are opposed to the recall spent $45 million. You know. And it's just going to get worse in the general election. There are small House of Representative races and senatorial races in small states, because small states have 2 senators. They're going to get outspent 50-1, possibly. You know.
Yeah, Daniel reamed Paul Graham at PyCon, so he was being very kind to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks. All right. We're taking a break. There's some very small cupcakes over there, and more beer. Please enjoy.
Good to meet you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Seriously, Brad.
Yeah, if you want to help out.
I do want to help
Okay.
out. I mean, whatever help I can do.
Are you Python or Ruby or?
Python? But I can do
We're
Ruby
probably
if I
going
need
to do it in Ruby, I think. Yeah.
In
In help?
Stack.
Do you have a
Do
car?
you need mining help?
Not on that project. No, that's going to be pretty cut and dry. They're handling the data part of it. I forgot to bring any cards. If you give me your cards, I can.
You know what? Oh, I need to buy a card.
I don't have a card.
Well, you got my email there. Yeah, just Paul B. at
Someone
Web.
to jump on. Like, I can go jump on a bus once a week and go to Indiana.
Oh, they would love that. Well, we can connect you with the Sunlight people as a volunteer. Sure.
That's what I mean.
Oh,
this
that'd
is
be
so
great.
important.
Okay,
It's
good.
so important. I recognize.
Well, I'll connect you with the Sunlight people on that thing. That'd be real good. Yeah.
I mean, I followed the Walker recall.
I went up there to Burlington for the rallies and everything. Yeah. It's amazing the people who are involved in that.
But I think it was actually, I mean, yeah, it's, in the large it was unsuccessful, but I think it actually demonstrated nationally, you know, that there is still an organized labor movement to be reckoned with to some extent, and I think that activists are willing to get out there and fight, at least in certain, you know, where there's a tradition.
This is about an hour-long conversation. We actually talked to people that were involved, and it's really complex in terms of why they lost. Money had a lot to do with it, but there are all kinds of other factors also, which we can. Strangely enough, one of the real experts is Bowser from Sha Na Na. He's about, you know, get a job, get a job. That's from the 50s. You probably never heard of it. He was a big celebrity. He's traveling the country doing concerts, but then he works on races. He spent like a month in Wisconsin speaking and helping organize, working with the unions. He knows the history of this stuff. He looks like an Italian Teamster mob boss kind of guy. He really does. He's a real interesting guy. But this is a real long conversation that I just don't have time to do.
Yeah, we'll grab, no, I don't want to keep you from the show. We'll grab beer sometime.
All right.
Because this is important.
Okay, good. Paul B. Yeah. Architects, like architects only wear in the price. With a T, not an H. That last page there should be achieved. Yeah, that's it. So this is a tone book, huh? I was interested in those, but I was afraid the functionality wouldn't be enough. Yeah. It was worked fine for this. Okay. Good luck. See you later.
Okay, guys, are you guys getting all set? We're getting good. 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks for tweeting, guys. See you. See you. My favorite couple. That should be. Why don't you get me one?
I'll set it up.
In charge of it.
No.
You have the whole lot of responsibility. I walk around like, oh, I'm so tired from holding all the responsibility. Look at that chippy handle on Twitter. Oh, man. Yeah. Mighty Star. I just did. Well, you saw the new site? Let me bring up. I have a new site. I have a new site design. I'll send it to the list. I'll send it up there real quick. Which email are you? You're F. Greg, right? That's what you're on now, right? Okay, I need you to bring something up for me once you get your stuff. Oh, okay. There we go. So I'm sending you this picture. It's a mock-up of our website. Just real quick view of it. So, it's right here. Okay, is it fair to say that you guys will have more Python in your presentation? Excellent. We like that. We're going in that direction. That's all.
But to start off, would it be weird if I'm down here?
All right, we're starting in like a couple minutes. So start heading to your destination in life. Can you check your email real quick? Yeah, we're gonna be starting here. Start heading back to your seats, please, or stand quietly. Okay, question for you. Who likes this space? I mean, is this pretty cool? Cool space, all right, good. Yeah, so 1871, they are still taking applicants. There's a waiting list, but they're still taking applicants. If you don't know what they are, they're one of the few digital co-work spaces in the world that's purely digital. And it's a 50,000 square foot facility. If you get a chance, walk around a bit. Notice its design and its atmosphere and its energy. There's a lot of good things going on here. There's a lot of Python going on here as well, which is also good, I think. So get on the website, and if you have a company, a small company, say 1 to 20 people, 20 maybe even too large, small company, and you want to pay, I'm probably misquoting them, but $400 a month per desk. Very good open office hours. They hold office hours in all sorts of areas. If you're a company looking for capital, come to their office hours for capital. If you're a company looking to meet developers, or you are a developer, come to those. Those are public, a lot of those. But if you're a member of 1871, there's a lot of private events you get access to as well. Chicago is an international company, and not company, city, with great sports teams, great airports, great transportation. We need a tech center like this. Our tech community should be larger than it is, and this is just the start of it. And it's really taken off right now. It's one of the few cities I can say there's more money investing than people taking the money to be invested. That's pretty impressive. Doesn't show up? Okay. So one of the things we're working on right now, we have a mentorship program a lot of people are involved with. If you want to be a mentor or a mentoree, contact the list and get involved with the community. One of the things we're working on right now is our website. It's being totally redone. And if our computer geniuses can figure out how to bring it up, I'll show you a mock-up of the site.
Hey, Brian.
What's up?
What's involved in the mentor program?
What's involved with it?
Yeah.
Well, right now the mentorship program is very unstructured, but we have plenty of funds in order to host in-person meetings, and we have plenty of experts in different areas who'd be more than happy to meet with you at various locations, even Pumping Station 1, I presume. You'd be okay with hosting a mentorship there, I imagine. And it basically entails, you may be a very novice developer and you want to work on something with Python, or you want to work on something very advanced. And there's also, there's a migration path to other internships with some of the companies we've built relationships with. I believe we even have an intern from Lakeshore here tonight, and that sort of thing is certainly, just really a starting point. It's a seed. So as you see up here, before we get started, you just look at this. This is kind of a mock-up of our new site. We're going to make it look a little more professional, but besides that, the character is still there. Chippy is our mascot. We did vote on that at one point. It is pronounced Chippy. If you say it wrong, we'll do things to you that we don't want to talk about right now. And the graphic was done by the girlfriend of a PyCon attendee who gave me his card. And I said, wow, that's some really cool watercolors on the back of your business card. Can you do a logo for Chippy? And they said, hell no. And I said, please, we'll throw money at you. And they said, okay. So that's our new logo. And it's silhouetted up there. As you saw on the list, we were talking all about SVG and some crazy stuff, and that was derived from that. So
Yes, it will look better. Yes, it will be more functional. Yes, it's going to be done by the mentorship program. The graphics itself are contributed by Imaginary Landscape, who've been doing anybody there from there? They have a large Python background. Ian Bicking was there. There's a list of Python people that were there. But the design was done by them for free as a contribution to our group. And so, Imaginary Landscape, we appreciate you, yeah, very much. I gotta get rid of that "to" there, that welcome to Chippy. I just can't, that just kills me. But our mentors tell me that they can easily hackser that with some HTML scripting, but they're gonna do jQuery to change that. Oh my God, jQuery fix it as it all. All right, so we're ready for the next presentation. Everybody ready? Everybody got another beer? Are we out? We still got beer? There's some very, very cheap wine over there. Okay, I'm impressed with our consumption. So, guys, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I just can't do you justice, and I thank you so much for being here tonight. Warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.